Good afternoon, ladies. I'm coming into the group, I hope, with your question of the week this week from one of my circle ladies, Kerry Knight, who's asked the following question. And if you need any sort of trigger warnings, it's about grief and money and intrusive thoughts. So I just want to caveat that if you're worried or don't want to hear anything about grief, then please switch off now. So the question is, I started listening to the Freedom, so I've got an 8-week Freedom program, which is open. If you want to do that, let me know and I can send you the link. But anyway, Kerry has done and is a participant of the Freedom program, of my She Finds Freedom program. And the question that she asks is, she started listening to the Freedom program again, and in the video about the iceberg, because I use the iceberg model of change as part of my teaching, foundational teaching. And what she said is, we often don't know that we are always safe. And that is what she's reflecting on, what I've said in the video. And she's saying, yes, that's exactly it. Logically, I know I'm still here breathing, that I'm alive and safe, but it doesn't always feel safe. It's been 6 years today since I saw my husband take his last breath, and I didn't feel safe as the child in me felt abandoned. I'm having really fearful thoughts again around money. And yes, it's my habitual familiar habit of thinking, and logically, I'm here alive, I'm safe. But I don't feel safe, I feel vulnerable. If I can't pay my bills, I can't feed my son and myself. And these are basic needs, and they feel like a struggle at times, and I feel threatened. I get that it's all coming from my thinking, and I'm making meaning of it. But I don't understand how I help my nervous system and not allow these thoughts to hijack me so much. I don't feel like I'm living. I feel like I'm existing in survival mode most of the time. So there's a few pieces to this which are quite interesting, and I'm very grateful that Kerry has let me use this for the question of the week today, because I thought it might be one that some of you may resonate with, particularly around money and the feeling of safety and not feeling as if you are safe, particularly around money. Now, Kerry, I'm really sorry to hear that it's been 6 years today since you saw your husband take his last breath, and I know from my own personal experience around grief that anniversaries can feel very painful, very raw. A lot of emotions can often come up around anniversaries, which will have an impact on your nervous system anyway. So go gently with whatever is occurring for you today. And I think potentially what one has a tendency to do, rather than feel what needs to be felt around grief or any kind of traumatic or emotionally charged situation, is we go to our head, we ignore our body, we repress and suppress lots of feelings, and we go to our brain and we're like, it must be because I'm worried about money. So the brain, in its kind of machine-like way, has decided that if you think about money and worry about money, then you won't have to deal with the emotions that grief brings up. And believe me, I know this so well because A, I run from my grief for a good 20 odd years, and B, I often substituted my worry and fear because I focused a lot on money and my relationship with money and my fear around money and that provision, that internal provision. Now, this is also related to, yes, your nervous system, because most women's and men's nervous system can be activated and charged around the thinking around money and provision. Now, Kerry, what you said here is, I get that it's all coming from my thinking, And I want you to just kind of gently push that to one side, because where you're going with that, through that line of inquiry, is, I know it's my thinking, but ... which means you're making yourself wrong, you're making yourself not good enough, I haven't got it yet, and all the things that people do, particularly when they've been around the principles world, which is, I'm not seeing it, I'm not getting it, I know it's my thinking, but etc, etc. And what I want to say about this is that money and the relationship to money and provision is very, very complex, and a lot of this stuff in our nervous system is related to how we felt safe and if we felt safe as a child. Now, I'm going to tell you something about thought that I think might be really important, particularly for those of you who are in the principles community. Your nervous system was made in utero the same time that your skin was formed. Your skin is a boundary, and it was formed and made at the same time as your nervous system, which means your nervous system in utero was deeply attached to your mother's nervous system. And if your mother reacted while she was pregnant with you to certain things, your nervous system as the baby inside will have also been reacting, which means there was no conscious thought going on at the time. So sometimes this isn't even about, I know it's my thinking, but sometimes these are deeply rooted, embodied experiences in our being, in our body, which of course is energetic and hugely related and connected to our parents, particularly on the mother's line, because we were within our mother's womb as we were being created. So it's often not so simple as, I know it's my thinking, because Kerry, if that were true, when you see you have a thought, that the thought is neutral, that the thought in and of itself can't hurt you, you would not get scared into fear and collapse. Now, at this point, money for you is a blind spot, and it is for a lot of people, because the relationship that women have with provision, which is their masculine, their internal masculine, internal and external, is hugely complex. And there is nothing wrong with you, firstly, and secondly, the learning will be about you connecting to your truth in every moment. And the more your nervous system is activated thinking about money and fear, and then it's tied up in grief and emotion because sadly your husband died, that masculine provision was kind of taken away, taken off the table. So that means it's left to you to provide for your children. And often if we have this difficult relationship with self and we felt unsafe and threatened at many times in our life, for whatever reason, the reason is irrelevant, because it's your unique experience of that event, of any event. And the nervous system and the subconscious really gets formed and activated between, like, in utero to 7 years of age. So much of this stuff is deeply unconscious, and it takes gentleness and finesse to unravel the nervous system and its activation, particularly if these are deep rooted for many, many years. Now, Carrie, I know that you're the same age as me, so you're 51 years old, which means that potentially we're looking at 51 years of reacting and having an activation in your system, in your body, which is unconscious. Now, I know as well that money in and of itself, I appreciate what you're saying. If I can't earn any money and I can't feed my children, that looks like a real fear. But in that state of nervous system activation, you activate that response, which means your prefrontal cortex is switched off. That means you don't make any memories, and it's very, very difficult to come up with ideas and have clarity and have inspiration, because you're reacting from the past. You're reacting from this feeling of not being safe. Money is such an interesting, complex subject, and for those of you who are interested in learning more about this, I did a money masterclass in my circle community, which if you come into that circle community, you'll have access to. I'd really like to do a deeper course around the feminine and money, because I think it's such a deep, rich, interesting topic, and one I've struggled with for so much of my life. And that feeling of safety and security tied up in getting money in, or earning money, and money being kind of connected to my worth. I'm self-employed. Many of the women in my community are self-employed. So there's this real connection between asking for money, doing stuff for free. The feminine likes to be nurturing and giving and loving and wants to overgive. So many women don't know their worth. Many women struggle to ask for money for their services. Many women undercharge and don't trust their own inner provision. And this piece is important because the masculine energetic, the masculine within you, the energetics within you, that piece, the provision piece, if that's not something that you trust or you even understand what I'm talking about, that provision is something that needs to be gently and carefully worked on for your nervous system to regulate and calm down enough for you to either get an idea. I bet, you see, that's the other thing with women, is that they have billions of ideas because they're creative beings, right? So they have lots of ideas, lots of ideas, lots of ideas. But without that connection to the provision, the ideas tend to sort of fall away and drop away, and self-doubt creeps in, and nobody will buy this from me creeps in. And so we sort of end up, walking through mud and the swamp just to make ends meet, which feels like life is against me, life is difficult, I'm never going to be whatever we're making that mean. And it's usually I'm not good enough in some form. So if you feel like you're existing in survival mode, Kerry, it's probably because you are existing in survival mode in terms of your nervous system. You are probably in some state of shutdown and collapse and freeze, which has probably been the activation for some time, which is neurologically wired. And this is how it's interesting, because you start to get a perception, a neuroception of where your body's going to. Now, it's not the truth. These are coming from old stories about being unsafe and feeling threatened, and putting the kind of, looking outside of yourself and saying, well, it must be because of the money, but it's not usually about the money. It's about your relationship to self and your relationship to your truth, and living from that place regardless of what anyone else thinks, and understanding that when you live from that place, from your truth, from your being, your feminine being, which is dissension, which is expansion, you'll know what to do. But if we are scrabbling around for pennies and feeling activated all the time, we're not going to pay attention to the nudge, the intuitive nudge that comes in, which might bring in money. So this is a really complex subject, and whilst I understand really deeply, Kerry, I want to reiterate again, today is an anniversary for you, which is going to be traumatic, and you will have a lot of feeling about this. So I would encourage you today to try and sort of put the money piece to one side. Allow yourself to feel whatever needs to be felt, because we're very good at bypassing that, not feeling what's in our body, what needs to come through, going to our brain from our body and going, it must be about the money, or it must be about this. Where really and truly, And gently and lovingly, if you can just sit and give yourself some space and ask yourself what you need today to allow yourself to process whatever kind of grief comes up. And notice when you go to your head, even as I say that, what are you experiencing in your body? And try to separate the grief from the fear and the feeling of being unsafe, because that feeling of safety is going to come from your deep knowing that you are okay. And if you're looking for evidence of not being okay, of course the brain has a negativity bias. It's going to find all the reasons, if that's your belief. And a belief, of course, is just a thought carried through time over and over again. But the advantage that we have as humans, we are brilliant, we have innate wisdom. Our brain is plastic, which means neuroplasticity. If you start to remember that safety can be found right now in this moment, regardless of your circumstances, and you start to look for the tiny little joys in every day, regardless of all the other stuff that's going on, you can rewire. You can rewire all of those neurons that are fired together to activate the nervous system at even the thought of money. And from there, you can start to see where you are bringing love, where you are bringing money in, where you have got things. And obviously I know your story a little bit, and I don't want to kind of break any confidences, but I know if I sat and spoke to you, Kerry, I could show you where those things are to prove to you where these stories and these narratives are keeping you stuck. And that stuckness and feeling of unsafety is familiar to you. And that's all. It's neurologically wired to be familiar. And there's ironically, and the paradox is, we often feel safer being troubled and anxious and worried than we would do if we took a jump and a leap of faith into possibility and potential, because it feels easier for us to believe we're shit and we're crap and we're not good enough. And it's such a tragedy, really, that so many women feel like this. They feel stuck and trapped and not good enough, because every single woman I ever meet, ever, has beauty and wisdom and gold and just brilliance. Every woman I ever meet, and your body holds all of that as well, and it has innate intelligence and wisdom. So if you're feeling all of this stuff in your body, you have to allow what it's trying to tell you, because it speaks in sensations, and of course the nervous system is activated, so there's messages in there. You are the medicine that you need. If you can just get beyond the story of not being safe and feeling threatened. And, Kerry, you lost your husband 6 years ago, and that's a pretty fucking big deal for any human to go through. And grief is, you know, grief is a long game, and your body's holding on to that, you know. So I hope you found that helpful. I appreciated you letting me do this question for Question of the Week. And I'm sending you a lot of love today, but it's about being gentle. It's not about being critical or slagging yourself off or judging yourself or feeling frustrated or any of the other myriad of things that we can feel about our own self. It's about understanding, compassionate inquiry, talking to someone you trust, finding ways to settle down your nervous system when it feels activated, so attuning to your own self, and trying to listen out for the messages in the body. How is she talking to you? What are the messages in the body? Take a week just to kind of assess and attune to your own self. But today, given that it's the anniversary of your husband's death, go gently, don't trust your thinking, and be kind to yourself, not critical, because that will go a really long way in helping you to feel less threatened and more worthy, because you're just as worthy as anyone else on the planet. So for now, thank you, and I will talk to you very soon.